The federal budget is out and it was a big one. And here to tell us what it all means for you and your personal finances, we have Chris Gandhu joining us from Calgary. He's a high net worth planner with TD Wealth. Chris, it's always great to see you. This was a 750-page budget document. It was huge. But what's interesting to me is that for all the work that's being done and spending, I'm going to say on stimulus, of course, to help us recover from the pandemic, there actually wasn't a lot when it came to raising revenues, taxes, and maybe some of the things people were nervous about.
Hi, Kim, happy to be here. And you're exactly right. Leading up to this budget, a lot of talk and a lot of rhetoric about how we're going to pay for these large deficits. And I completely agree with you. There was very few income tax raisers. There's a digital services tax, which is quite minor. But really, apart from that, nothing on income tax, nothing about the capital gains inclusion rate increasing, or the much talked about wealth tax, nothing at all.
Okay, let's talk about what was in it then, Chris. Childcare was really the centerpiece in terms of both the spending and the focus. So maybe tell us a bit about that from your perspective.
Right. So this universal childcare has been talked about in Canada for decades, and it took a COVID budget to bring it to the forefront. And what the government is proposing is that through some sort of a cost sharing with the provinces, they expect to reduce the childcare costs for Canadian families by up to 50%. And that's happening fairly quickly by the end of 2022. And then fairly ambitious that by the year 2025, 2026, they expect the childcare cost to drop as low as $10 a day for most families. So this is quite ambitious, something to look forward to, but also perhaps the most expensive part of the budget.
Although it's awfully expensive for families who are paying for childcare, so maybe that's something from a planning perspective they can think about as they plan their families the next little while. Another big one I know that you had your eye on was support measures. We saw things like the CRB and wage subsidies and commercial rent subsidies being extended, but also some of them being scaled back at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. So we have both of these things happening. So most of these wage subsidies, whether business or personal, were set to expire in June. Now they're being extended until September. So there's a 3-month extension. But sometime in the summer, June or July, the benefits that are currently payable under these subsidies are also being reduced because I suppose the government expects that people will be going back to work and there's less need for that stimulus. Also notable are a few new things that have been thrown into the mix. First, we have a Canada Recovery Hiring Benefit. So for those employers that are hiring new employees or rehiring employees, they can choose between the CEWS, the wage subsidy, or this program, whichever they feel gives them a better benefit. But this program doesn't start until the summer. We have a $15 minimum wage on certain federally regulated industries, so that's new. We have some new programs that have been announced, but no details yet on Black entrepreneurship and Indigenous entrepreneurship in Canada. So certainly a mixed bag of things there.
Interesting. In terms of on the revenue side, again, we saw that it was light, but one thing that was interesting, it looks as though the federal government trying to weigh in on some of the high housing prices is a national vacancy home tax. Tell us a bit about that one.
Right. So, this is something that the city of Vancouver has done. So perhaps the feds are learning from that experiment. So this tax, as is currently proposed, and again, there aren't very many details because the feds expect to have a consultation on this, but it's expected to apply at a rate of 1% based on the fair value of the property, as long as the property is being underused or sitting vacant. And of course, what is underused is going to be up for debate. And if you happen to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, you're exempt. So it really does apply to those that are non-Canadians hanging on to Canadian property and according to the feds, have unproductive use of that property. And I think this is effective the year 2022, Jan 1, 2022.
That will be one to watch, especially in, I think, some certain communities out west. We'll have to see how that one plays out. Another interesting one here, a luxury tax being announced on planes, boats, and cars.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Kim, if you recall, actually, this was in 2019 is when the federal Liberals first talked about this as part of their election campaign. And of course, we didn't have a 2020 budget, so it seems to have died, but now it's been resurrected. So if you happen to be a Canadian purchasing an automobile or an aircraft that is worth more than $100,000, or a boat worth more than $250,000, which I guess is not a boat, it's a yacht of some type, then this tax is going to apply to you effective Jan 1, 2022. And the tax is a lesser of either 10% of the total fair value of the purchase, or I believe it's 20% of the excess. So, if you happen to buy a car for 120,000, rather than pay 10%, which would be 12,000, you'd only pay 20% off the 20,000 above 100,000. So you'd get away with paying 4,000.
And finally, the one also, I was talking earlier with James Marple, our economist, about the breadth of the budget and the scope. I mean, it covers everyone and everything in some way, shape, or form. And the last thing I wanted to finish off with you is there are both some changes from personal finance for both seniors and for students, both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, there's support for seniors. The old age security benefit is being increased by 10%. I believe that doesn't kick in until next summer. And there's a one-off $500 payment to seniors this summer, sometime in August, I believe. Interesting that seniors are defined as 75 plus, not the typical age 65. For students, there are a few benefits out there. First is an interest deferral on student loans, I believe extended until 2023. The federal student grants program is being enhanced. In fact, the grants are being doubled. And if you happen to be a student that has just entered the workforce, previously an obligation to repay your student loans if your income exceeded $25,000. Well, now that income threshold has been increased significantly to $40,000 and it's inflation adjusted thereafter.
Chris, always a pleasure. We so appreciate you taking the time and running through everything with us.
Thank you for having me, Kim.